I won't to the pursuit of truth. So I've been watching these things on Sky News, and I thought I'd bring them to you as they're examples of what I like to bring to you about, in my argument that the system that we live within, or the way we live our lives, isn't the best way. And these are examples to show that, major examples, and just to sort of a way to sort of give example to that argument, and so that you can look at it and think, well yeah, is he talking sense? And what are we going to do about this? So the first one was to do with, from Sky News, is Wilfred Frost talking to the former Chancellor Exchequer. I think it's Lord Philip Hammond, in the system that we live within. And there's two things that I wanted to bring. The first was where he's talking about net zero and how we have to, educate the population when it comes to, if we want to do something, then we can't just do it. We have to sort of make the people think that this is what they want us to do. And it was quite interesting to hear him talk like that, to explain, not, it's like brainwashing or mind control, but just to sort of explain the way our system is, and how, how we can become apathetic, how we can become, what's on the news is what we will, jump to, and, how, our minds are set in things and knowing what's important. And we're told these things through the government, through the news, and that sets our mind. And so therefore, when someone comes with a counter, then it's very difficult, because you've been set, as it were. And it was interesting to hear him sort of tell the truth on that how, that it was little bit demeaning in the way he sort of made out that government was somehow so clever, and the population, it reminded me a bit of Robert Tress or whatever, I've forgotten his name, Eric Blair, his pseudonym, George Orwell, in the way that it sort of put down the populace and sort of said, well, they're too stupid to, well, he didn't say that, but the sentiment was that they would need to be educated so that they would know that what the government was doing was the right thing. So it was interesting to hear that. And then the second thing he was talking about was to do with the rat concrete, and how, another argument why I think that the system we live is stupid, in the sense that, he says, because the Chancellor, there's more things coming in than they have money for. And so therefore, there's schooling, there's hospitals, there's, education, there's these buildings, there's defence, war and all that kind of stuff. All these things coming in, and they don't have enough money to do all these things, like new diseases, research, getting equipment and paying for medicines, so it affects all of us, all of our lives, as fellow human beings. And this is the system that we live within. And remember that, we're born free. Everything here is free. There's no reason to live with these shackles. We've come up with this system over time from our forefathers, that we have to do everything for money, and we're limited by that, because there's only a certain amount of money, because every country's worried about GDP and interest and staying above other countries. And that also is what's led to, like in the system that we live in, we have a name for first world countries, or developing, for third world countries. Imagine when everything was free. Why did, when you watch things like 90 Days and you see the condition that some people are living in, when there's no real necessity for that, because humans have already worked out how to build roads, how to make the great houses, how to make all the infrastructure and irrigation and water, since the Romans, and all this stuff. But the problem is, because it takes money, and of course also countries want to keep certain countries in the way that they are, so that they don't rise up, so that they are the workforce of humanity, because we know a lot of companies outsource, to other countries, and due to economic reasons. So this is the world we live in. It's very cruel and very sadistic and greedy and possessive, and it's unnecessary. And the problem is it doesn't really work, because for the majority of us, you remember, you've been given one existence, And your whole life is this hamster around this wheel. And yeah, I know it's difficult to sort of try and replace this because it's easy the way it is. Because you're told, you know that to get things you have to buy, you have to earn money, and that's that. And like it's a reward system that you've got to work, you get money, you can buy the things, and you think, yeah, but not really, because you don't realise when you were born you were free, and now you're not. Because you have to do all these things, because everything around you was free at one point until everyone possessed it and then put a price tag on it. How silly we are. And how, not only that, it's also limiting us, because we could have worked out lots of things and done lots of things if we weren't restricted by cutting up humanity in different boxes and working in this very lonely way, really. So here's this first bit with Philip Hammond talking about... Oh, I just deleted it. Oh, dear. Talking about... the system that we live within. I hope I can find it first time. Should be this one. And, illustrating to me, I don't know whether to you, that, well, it's not really that great.
We have a sustainable basis on which to build solidly based public services we can afford.
You mentioned net zero there. In an article in the Telegraph recently, in an interview you gave to the Telegraph recently, which followed the Uxbridge by-election, you said, in a democracy, if you fail to take people with you at your peril. Is that taking place at the moment with the aim to get to net zero? Do you think we were bringing the people along with that aim and we are now not? Is that what you meant by that phrase?
No, I think I've believed for some time that politicians in the UK have taken the view, rightly in my view, that the energy transition, tackling climate change, is an urgent priority. And they have forgotten that even though they understand it's an urgent priority, they need to bring the public with them. Because in a democracy, you can only do what the people are prepared to consent to. And it's no good politicians saying, effectively, this is too important to submit it to the democratic process. We have to persuade people that investing in decarbonising our economy rather than growing the size of our economy is what they want to do for the sake of the long-term good of the planet. Mm-hmm. We have to sell that to them. We can't just assume that they will agree with that political judgment.
Just finally, to wrap things up, Lord Hammond, I'm sure you've seen the story over the last couple of weeks around rack concrete in schools. The Prime Minister's been given a bit of grief about that because his time as Chancellor, he could have spent more on addressing this, and that the Education Department wanted funding for 200 schools to be reassessed and rebuilt. They funded, or willing to fund 50, and many fewer than that have actually been completed. Does a Chancellor have to take direct responsibility for decisions like that, or is that unfair because there are so many demands on the public purse?
I think it is unfair. The school building programme is a capital programme. There are many other demands on available capital, and governments have to decide where the priorities are. Demographics is one of the drivers. I know this from my own experience. When you look at school building requirements, you look not just at what schools we need now, but you look at the profile of the population coming through. How many schools are we going to need in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time? And you're trying to right-size the estate all the time. And I may have missed it, but I'm not aware that we understood this problem in the way that we now understand it at the time in question. I don't think we understood it as such an urgent safety issue that needed to be addressed. And I mean, the Chancellor has said now that he will make funds available to deal with the problem, and that's right. But you, as Chancellor, you're constantly making decisions about how to prioritise between different demands for capital funding, and there are always more demands than there are funds available. And it's simply trite for people to say afterwards, oh, you should have funded a much bigger programme over here. I've no doubt there are people also saying we should have spent much more on defence over the last few years, because look what's happening now in Ukraine. You make these judgments and then you have to adjust them over time.
Lord Hammond, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Right, so there you go. So that's what we've decided to live like that, in a system where we can't do everything we want to do. And imagine, like, that if that's happening to you, because well, it will be happening to most humans that live in a system like this, because everyone has to go through life and the tribulations of it, and medical conditions and diseases and things that probably, if we didn't work the way that we're working, if we all worked together, then we would have solved these things a long time ago, because we wouldn't have had a limitation, because we have all the energy in humans and all the intelligence. It's just we're all working against each other, and pharmaceutical companies, etc., working for profit. So there's always a problem when you have money involved, and we all know that. This is no great conspiracy. We all know that, surely. Anyone who knows anything about money, and even if you have money yourself, you know how problematic it can become, and especially like with the industries and business and things. We know the scandals over the years, and that's not to say that it doesn't work sometimes. I'm not saying that. And the problem is, maybe is there a different system that we could use, where we could all work together as human beings and not need to divide ourselves up, still have the things that we want to believe in and etc., but not have money, and have a nicer life, and actually sort out some of these problems, and everyone have a good existence that we all deserve to have. And anyone who believes in religion, surely that's what God would have wanted. No, I'm just surprised that I don't hear religious people, saying get rid of money. I don't see the same fervour that Jesus had when he was in the temple throwing over the tables of money. Where's that passion to try and get humanity what they deserve, everyone to have a nice life? There's no reason why there should be, what we call third world countries. There's no reason for that, because we know how to build all these things. We know how to do this, and we have the energy and the resources and humanity to be able to do this. We need to love each other a lot more. That's the thing. So the next thing is, and it plays off the back of that, and also, that my last one, when I was talking about the historian Robert Lacey was talking about how you can just go to your MP and get rid of the monarchy if you just tell your MP you don't want to pay for it anymore. And I was talking about how most humans are apathetic, in the sense that, we're born into this world and we're told this is how it is, and even as children we realise that, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we just print more money? And we're told, well, it doesn't work like that. We can't just do that. And then you forget about those things, and you autopilot your life, and until you come across something like, say, Flat Earth or 9/11 or moon landing, and then you think about, wait a minute, if that's possible, that these things may not be true, or we could have been lied at, or you see these scandals where they show, that there was conspiracies and etc. When it comes to killing people and all that kind of stuff, and wars and throughout history, and humanity. Then you start to question, well, what about everything? Well, wait a minute, I forgot that we were born on a place that we don't even know why we're here. We don't even know what things are called. We didn't find lions and trees and tigers and with name tags on them telling us what they were called. We made them up. We made the names up. We made everything up. We're playing Monopoly or Game of Life with ourselves. And we made up all these different names and these different identities, dressing up and putting on certain things like suits and cloaks to become doctors, and and all these things are man-made inventions. Some of them are from natural, but most of them are man-made constructs. And then you don't realise all that. You don't even think about all that. And why would you? And that's the problem. And that's why people go through and just thinking, well, that's fine the way that we live. Well, what can we do? And so it just it reminded me of that when I saw this story about these women surgeons who have had to put up with, indecent or sexual abuse in some cases, sexual assault, and how she talks about, this lady, the surgeon, talks about, or being scared of standing up. Shouldn't be scared of standing up for the truth or for the right, but people often are scared of standing up for the truth or the right because of what happens to you when you do that. When you stand up and say, no, this isn't right. Even, look at these conspiracies when people believe something, how the both sides will, use their confirmation bias and have that kind of argument and that, anger, and that, and then they can do things against you. When it comes to say flat earth, people who believe in globe earth, people who believe in flat earth, both of them do it. Both sides will believe in their confirmation bias rather than look at the truth or facts or anything. And, that then people become scared of standing up for, say, either side. unless you have a big side against you, say like, with Globe Earth, you have all the science or NASA or whatever, then you can say, well, according to them, and then you can feel safe. But if you're the minority, then it's very difficult. And we all know that in society. Lots of people know that feeling that I'm talking about. And so it was interesting to see this woman say, and that's why, it's difficult for people to stand up. And that's, part of the reason why the system and life hasn't changed, because people are too scared to stand up and say, well, I don't want this anymore, and we should have better for our children or ourselves or for humanity. And what a shame that is, because then that means that because of that, we're never going to change these things. So hear this.
With 90% of women saying they had witnessed some form of sexual harassment. Well, after surveying more than 1,700 medical professionals, the study found that 63% of female surgeons have experienced sexual harassment from colleagues, while 24% of men reported sexual harassment. 30% of women said they'd been sexually assaulted by a colleague, that number 7% of men. And 11% of women reported being forced into physical contact for career opportunities. Well, speaking to Sky News, within the last hour, one of the report's authors told us that there is a culture of silence when it comes to reporting these incidents.
I think it's a situation which has been hiding in plain sight in surgery. Operating theatres are high-pressured environments. They're dynamic. There are a lot of powerful people within them. And I think many of the behaviours that we talk about in terms of sexual harassment are simply normalised within the workplace in surgery. The reason people aren't coming forwards is because they're not feeling safe in terms of reporting. There's a culture of silence and they're fearful for their future careers. And that's one of the reasons why we're asking for independent external investigations of these incidents, because the workforce simply doesn't trust the current system.
Also in the last hour, Dr. Liz O'Riordan, who's a retired breast surgeon, shared her experiences with us.
I've experienced sexual harassment in almost half the jobs I did as a junior trainee, and I'm shocked that it's still happening today and something needs to be done. When I was operating, one of my consultants asked across the table who was I sleeping with, because I looked like I could go a round or two. And I've been at a Christmas party where a married consultant from another hospital ground himself into me and said, "It's not cheating if we kiss on a dance floor." Those are just two examples I can talk about. I think at the time when I was training, it was common. Surgery was and still is a male-dominated environment. And when you're in the operating theatre, you are very vulnerable. You are wearing thin scrubs, stood shoulder to knee with the men you're working with for many hours at a time. And it's very easy for lewd comments or wandering hands to enter your field. But when none of the other people say something, you kind of feel as a junior that this is accepted behaviour, that you have to tolerate it. And the other hard thing is, as a junior surgeon, your career depends on the consultant letting you operate, training you, saying that you're fit to move on to the next job. And the fear I had was that if I said something, that man would no longer train me, that the rumours would spread that I was a difficult person to work with, and it may stop me becoming a surgeon altogether. I think it's a small number of repeat offenders, but because women make up such a small amount of the workforce, they are likely to work with these men. I mean, I've worked with many amazing male and female surgeons. I married one. I think it's just a small number, but it's really hard to call them out when your job is at stake.
Well, the government has been told it may have violated.
Okay, so there you go. I think that's what she said. It reminded me, if you tolerate this, the Manic Street Preacher's song. I think that would be the title of this podcast, video, whatever these things are called. But I think that grows into a wider thing, this in plain sight. When you take that argument, when you take that idea and extrapolate it to humanity and the world and the system and the way we all live, that every country is divided, every country has schools and banks and money and all these things that are the same, and these infrastructures that are these big businesses and etc. When you look at that through that same microscope, as it were, that same sentiment of plain sight, that's the same. We all know that the way we live is not right. We all know that, money is shackling us. We all know that the way we treat different people around the world, how world leaders, look at, the wars that have gone on, the illegal wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and, You know, we've all seen the WikiLeaks footage and stuff. And, you know, even throughout history, how, you know, black people were made slaves, gypsies, you know, Jehovah's Witness, you know, there's the Irish, there's loads of inequalities and things that are not equal. Through, you know, the treatment. There's you know, men, women, there's lots of it. We all know this. We've all seen these things, even, you know, throughout history and through our lifetime. If we look through history books, we know. If we know in our own lifetime, we've seen these things, we've lived through them. We've lived through the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, the weapons of mass destruction are never found, the regime change that's meant to be against international law. We've seen how it's treated. We've seen economic crises. We've seen, you know, George Floyd, what happened to him. We've seen all these things. We've seen the system doesn't work. Constantly, we see it. It's in plain sight. We're all aware of it. But like she said, there's this culture of silence. That's what we all do. We swallow it. We go to bed, we wake up, we forget about it, we think about it again, or we see something on the TV, we think about it again, and then we go to sleep and repeat. But never changing that. But that's at peril of the future of humanity and our children that we don't do something about it through whatever reason it is. And that's, you know, by keep doing that, it never changes. And the only people who benefit from that are the ones in power, the ones in control, those ones where it doesn't affect them. The 1%, the rich, and even them, their lives are not that, you know, wonderful, because they die of the same diseases and die of the same things that we haven't bothered to make priority because of the way we've enslaved humanity. I don't know what it will take for us all to understand that. When will be that awakening? When will be that moment when humanity changes and loves itself and loves each other, so that we can progress? I don't know. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.